Story 1. I think someone should deeply want children in order to have children. I've never felt the call to have children. I have no desire to bring unwanted children into existence. Story 2. Absolutely nothing, honestly. I knew since I was 13 that I did not want them. Nothing sparked it. No conversations or trauma or any of that. I am 32 now and nothing's changed. I just do not feel like it. Story 3. Nothing about having babies ever appealed to me, least of all the ghastly, gory procedure of birthing. Even when I was a kid, I was not at all interested in baby dolls, only Barbie dolls. In college, I had nightmares about having had a baby and being in church for its baptism, realizing with horror that it was a huge mistake, but I was stuck with it as long as I lived. Story 4. I'm like you. I have a lot of reasons not to have kids, but I still feel a bit undecided. I guess I realized I'm more likely to regret having kids if I'm not sure than never having them. I love my life as it is, but I'm not sure I'd love being a full-time mom. Sounds like a lot. I am curious if my feelings would change with the right partner, though, so I've decided to leave the question open for now. Story 5. I never consciously decided. When I was too little to even remember and I'd play house or with dolls, I refused to ever have kids even then. That's just never been my life path, I guess. Story 6. I feel this very hard. I'm 34 and basically at that do-or-die age. Yes, plenty of women have kids later, but as far as planning goes, this feels very final to me. I've never wanted kids and always felt adamant about being child-free, but boy does that feel different staring down the barrel of 35 compared to 15 or even 25. I don't want kids because I've just never looked at a kid and thought, wow, I'd love to have or raise one of these. I also don't believe people should have kids unless they really want to. My parents had me at 35 despite not wanting kids before because they caved to the age pressure. Although they love me a lot, I think they mostly regret that decision and all I've taken from their lives, which they willingly gave, but it was big sacrifices, you know? Anyway, I don't really have any advice here. I'm mostly just commiserating that even as a staunchly child-free woman, I definitely feel some bubbling existential angst around not having kids because I know it means I'll have to carve out meaning in the absence of a human legacy, and I'm still trying to solve that particular mystery in my own life. Story 7. My parents had no idea what they were doing when they raised my sister and me, so I had no healthy example of parents in their roles or having a family get along. That, and knowing that I cannot provide a good life for a child because the quality of life has gone down. Story 8. I don't like them enough, and I know I would be a horrible parent. I have a temper, I have no patience, and when I get touched out, hungry, sleep-deprived, or am in pain, I am a miserable person to be around. Story 9. I'm a little too self-centered to sacrifice what I want for my own life in the future. What I want is going to require a lot of free time and resources. I'm not sure if I'm opposed to dating a woman with a child or children already, but I will not have my own. Story 10. Kids don't interest me. Many things don't interest me. Parrots, tropical fish, rifles, collecting wine. Kids are on that list. I know a woman who has a bird. The bird is very sweet. He dances. I am not interested in having a bird. Story 11. Trump being elected a second time and Project 2025. I cannot, in good conscience, bring a life into the hellscape that world will be. Especially as a transgender and queer person. It would be cruel. Story 12. When my uterine lining decided it had to be everywhere it's not supposed to be, I had to have a hysterectomy. To be fair, I am 43, so a little late to the party anyway, but still sad. Story 13. Have you ever been around a kid? Loud, annoying, terrible, stupid, dirty, coughs in your face, removes all your free time. There are literally no good things about a kid. Not ever. Story 14. Getting stuck watching all of the younger kids at family gatherings, plus babysitting to earn money at a young age. Also, I knew how nice it was to have an auntie with no kids come and spoil you for a day or two every now and then. Now I am that auntie. It's much more my style than motherhood would have been. Story 15. I'm unable to see myself as a mother. It's as if my brain cannot process the idea. Of course, something as visceral as this is difficult to explain at family gatherings. Story 16. Climate change. I have spent years studying the natural world and what we have done to it. The writing is on the wall. I cannot, in good conscience, bring someone into a world that will no longer have a place for us in a few decades. Plus, I have no interest in passing down a few genetic issues both I and my spouse have. Story 17. For two reasons. 1. I have a lot of mental health issues, and mental illness runs very deep on both my mom's and dad's side of the family. I have moments where I get really low even with my medication. While I do love kids and being around them, I'm just not parental material. Of course, many people in my family disagree with me on this topic and think I'd make a terrific parent, but it's just not for me. Story 18. I never had the maternal instinct, and I don't think a child deserves a mother who never really wanted to have them. The older I get, the more I see beyond sweet baby, little toddler, and how these kids turn out as adults. And there are some messed up young adult kids out there. Plus, you can't meet your child until they are born. Who knows what sort of person they will be? What if the child and I are not compatible personality-wise? I don't want to live in a house with someone I don't like. Story 19. My family has a history of mental illness, so I figured if I had children and gave it to them, it would be premeditated child abuse. Plus, I would not want my mother anywhere near another child. Story 20. Being an uncle. I adore my nephews, but toddlers are absolutely miserable to be around. I can't see myself having my own and keeping my cool. No child deserves to be screamed at for annoying but developmentally appropriate behavior, and I think I absolutely would. Also, I'm 30 and still renting a 500 square foot apartment, so not in the cards, financially speaking. I may never afford my own home. Story 21. A United States perspective. It seems people actively say, have kids. What joy and happiness they bring to your life. I don't disagree at all, but where's the real support? The South is trying to legitimately make children under 18 do heavy machine labor, fighting about footing the bill for a kid's lunch, paying teachers less than their education equivalents, where they have to pay for classroom supplies because of insane budgets. Not pro-life, they are pro-birthers. George Carlin was right. After birth, they're not interested in you until you're eligible for military service. Story 22. I always meant to have them someday, but it just never happened. I spent many childbearing years in relationships with people who couldn't or wouldn't. But I can't blame them. If I wanted it badly enough, I would have made it happen one way or another. So I'm just a cool auntie, and that's okay. Story 23. The chances of wars, approaching climate issues, and depleting natural resources. I don't want to bring a soul into this world to possibly experience those things. Story 24. Living in a household with severe domestic violence made me feel like children were anchors. I don't ever want to feel tied to anyone or any place. I want to be able to leave whenever I want. Story 25. My answer to a very similar question only a few days ago. Story 26. On my worst days, sometimes I'd like to see myself out, and I couldn't make someone on purpose knowing that they could feel that way someday. It's literally my fault because I chose to bring them here for my personal reasons. Story 27. I was unsure for a while about wanting children. I intended to have children with my former partner because I knew she really wanted 2 children, but now I do not want them. I appreciate any free time that I get. I work a full-time job, and I am always exhausted at the end of the day. There is just no way I could manage having children when, on most days, I just want to eat something and then go to bed. Story 28. I am basically already tired of being alive. I can't really take care of someone else when I do the bare minimum for myself. Also, kids are noisy and gross. I prefer comfort. No more added stress, please. Also, I'm broke as curse word. Basically, a combination of financial problems, my mental issues, and I don't want any unnecessary stress added. Story 29. Witnessing all my cousins imposing the same trauma onto their kids as we all went through, and complaining about their kids for having issues as young as toddlers. One of my nephews was diagnosed with depression at 10 and exposed to the folks in the extended family who perpetuate all the trauma onto others. They definitely called their parents out, but lacked the self-awareness that they are doing the exact same thing their parents did. My nephew is doing the best he can, but he is stuck in a very difficult home situation with no child protective services in the country they live in. I have a countdown of when he can go off to college so he can start preparing to escape from home. I swore to never have a kid because I would be terrified to make the same mistakes my cousins and parents did when it came to generational trauma. Story 30. I was 19 when my parents had my youngest sister. My dad was not an involved dad until the baby became fun, so for the first few months, I was the second parent. I cried, and I was frustrated. She refused a bottle, so if she was hungry while my mom was gone, she just cried, even if I gave her a bottle of breast milk. She was 2 months premature and had a choking problem. I dreaded being home because my dad was always angry she was crying when my mom left. I realized I could never have a kid if I could not handle my sister, where I could give her to my mom to escape. Story 31. I was 11. I woke up one day in May and made a promise to myself to never get married or have children. I am a third-generation child who witnessed generations of toxic attachments, poverty, and abuse. I have bad genes. I also have bad parents. I'd be a fool to bring more inferiority to the gene pool. But I also recognize I'm entirely too selfish to have children. I value freedom. And here we are 20 years later. Story 32. The idea that bringing another person into this world to inevitably experience pain is inherently cruel and selfish. They are also expensive, ridiculously so. I would rather use my money to enjoy the little time I have here traveling and seeing the world without the burden of bringing or figuring out what to do with a kid. Mental disorders and addiction also run in my family. It is also a huge feat to take on raising a child ethically and lovingly. It is guaranteed to make at least one mistake. Children are also extremely disparaged in society as a whole. The planet is dying. I get overstimulated easily. I do not want anything or anyone to come between the bond my partner and I have, or anything to unnecessarily complicate life. I enjoy our love as it is. It is stressful, constant worry that lasts a lifetime. No thanks. The pain. I have worked hard for my body. I do not want to change that with stretch marks, weight gain, or any other things that can happen with pregnancy. The return on investment is low. Very low. Anything that I can get with a kid, I can also get through other pursuits in life. Story 33. The fact that I know I would never be a good mother due to my disability getting worse over the years, and it started causing me to have angry outbursts. I have a lot of work on myself to do. Story 34. About 31 years ago, it occurred to me that it's extremely expensive to have a child. If I had that money and the time, I would have. Work gets you money but requires time, so it was not possible. Also, I correctly predicted how terrible our society is. Story 35. My wife never wanted children. I eventually grew to accept the idea that I was never going to be a father. Now that she broke up with me, I have the opportunity but not the desire or stability to start a family. How can I expect to provide for a family both financially and mentally when I feel so broken? I really wanted a family, but those dreams are dead. I don't care if I can have children until my deathbed. My drive is gone. I seriously doubt I'm going to find a woman who is going to change my world around and give me a happy family. Story 36. Having chronic health issues that can be inherited can be challenging. Firstly, it would put a lot of work on my partner to sometimes handle all childcare alone when I'm experiencing bad flares and can't contribute equally. Secondly, I'd have to discontinue several medications to get pregnant or breastfeed, which might worsen my health. Thirdly, sometimes my health has been bad enough that I've questioned if life is worth living, and that's not something I'd want to burden another person with. This makes me sad because I think I'd otherwise be a great and nurturing mom. However, I'm trying to find other ways to express that part of me by volunteering and finding other ways to feel like I'm helping take care of others. Story 37. I don't really like kids for more than an hour or two, and I never had any interest in babies. They are noisy and leak from both ends. In my 20s, I kept hearing, but it's different when they are your own. But I kept thinking, what if it isn't? What if it's a living hell for the next 20 years? What a horrible thing to do to a child. Every child deserves to be wanted and loved. Story 38. I had an idyllic childhood with a very close-knit family unit. Sunday dinner at the grandparents with my cousins, suburban life. But my passions were to travel the world and do many different things than how I grew up. I needed to constantly challenge my brain. I knew that if I had children, I would want them to have the type of childhood I had, but those days were gone. My family had spread out across the country when I was in college, and I would never be happy in the suburbs. I could not recreate it. With the type of mind I had and the constant need for adventure, my life would never have been suitable, in my mind, to raise a child the way I think they deserve to be raised. But I did live a very adventurous life and lived all over the world. I stay close to all my family members, not just immediate. I knew from a young age I never wanted children and stuck to it all my life. Story 39, we tried, that is, we didn't prevent it and it didn't happen. We didn't want to go deep into the whys or why nots of in vitro fertilization. And then I had to have a hysterectomy for other reasons. So we just became the best aunt and uncle ever. Story 40, babysitting. I decided that this was the last thing I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And no, I wasn't going to chance it being different when they're your own. Every time I see parents wrangling kids, it's a reminder of why I chose not to have any of my own. There's just zero desire or interest in doing so.